What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 14 of my reviewing and ranking King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard studio albums. I think we're almost halfway there, though by the time I reach there, it'll probably be not halfway there at this point because they're going to release more albums. But anyways, this is album number 14 that they've released. I'm reviewing them in order and then ranking them as I review them, so I'll drop that ranking at the end of this. This came out in 2019 and was the first thing they released after putting out 5 albums in 2017. So they took some time off, came back with this album. And this album, it started out with having sort of a concept like most of their other stuff has had. Like they wanted to make a Ambrose, what's his name? Ambrose Kenny Smith, is that his name? I'm not good with long names. I wanted to make a Boogie album, Canned Heat, Endless Boogie, I don't know, something along those lines. And hence 3 of the songs have the word Boogie in them. And what they ended up with is a King Gizzard album. Like there's boogie energy, there's a lot of harmonica, pretty straightforward songs. But then we also, because of their, I don't know, ADHD or just their relentless need to experiment, we get some really cool sort of techno electronic synth sounds towards the end, which are really fantastic. We also get your typical just kind of all over the place proggy, psyche, garage rocky, overcomplicated, but just wonderful King Gizzard energy. 40-minute album. It kind of, in a way, to me, reminds me of the previous album they released, the last one in 2017, Gumboot Soup, which the songs work together and it fits together as an album, but there is sort of a feel like they're just a whole bunch of songs and not necessarily a thread other than the boogie thread, which runs through them. And then the last 2 songs in particular are just like, sound like they're from another album altogether. And might be, I would say for me, are the highlight of the album. The lyrics are very environmental focused, eco warriors, fishing for fishies, don't go fishing. This guy, he doesn't want to catch a fish because he doesn't want to hurt the fish. Plastic Boogie is about don't use plastic. Our bags are bad. The Cruel Millennial. It sucks to be a millennial because of electronics and get off your phone. A lot of that kind of energy, which with this band, I can give or take the lyrics only because they're not horrible. And the lyrics are they go so well with the music. It's almost just like an extra instrument. So I can just kind of ignore what they're singing about. But there is a weird little eco bent to a lot of the lyrics that is a little more in your face. And I don't want to say preachy, but verging on preachy at times. But yeah. And then one more thing before I talk about the 9 songs that are on here is for almost every other release, almost all of them, except for maybe 1 in 2017, my thought process has been like, is this their best album? Like, is it just recency bias? Like, is this better than that one that I love from 3 years ago? I didn't have those thoughts with this one. I like this one. I enjoy it. I don't think they've put out a bad album yet. There is nothing on my list. Is clearly a ranking of favorites, not a ranking of good to bad, because they're all good. But this would rank as one of my least favorites. I don't think the songs have enough of a definitive identity. They just sound like what King Gizzard does. And at this point, I think Gumboot Soup was a perfect example of an eclectic album where they're touching on all their flavors and every song is fantastic. The sequencing is fantastic. This one doesn't quite do it for me, but it's still good. Fishin' for Fishies kind of sounds like it could have been on quarters. Has a slightly just little carefree rolling down the river afternoon and nature. We're fishing for fishies, but it's a sunny day and it's beautiful and we're not catching any fish, so we don't have to deal with anything like that. No smells, no blood, no worms. It's just we're enjoying the weather. Sort of that little like jazz rock slight flavor that Quarters has. Gentle, rolling, a little more laid back. Boogeyman Sam, cool boogie vibe, a lot of harmonica, really neat guitar solo towards the end. Really neat sounds on the guitar on this album. Solid song. I can't say it's a fantastic song. Bird Song is kind of jazzy, a little upbeat, kind of a really light type funk vibe. Kind of a neat little song. Plastic Boogie, no more, no more. Don't use your plastic. Very much a boogie energy. The Cruel Millennial. Ambrose sings this, and instead of Mackenzie, and it reminds me of like if Eric Clapton's The Core, as if they were covering Eric Clapton's The Core, but giving it a hardcore boogie vibe on it. Kind of a neat little song. Really awesome guitar playing. I think the guitar playing on this one is the best on the album so far. But yeah, and then we got a lot of harmonica going on. Just a lot of harmonica. I don't need this much harmonica. Not that big of a harmonica fan. But that's the Cruel Millennial. Reals Not Reals, kind of a nice psych rocker that drops into like an almost Paul McCartney-esque, like piano-driven 70s pop rocker. And it goes back and forth between that more aggressive rock energy and that more like melodic McCartney pop energy. Kind of a neat song, kind of a neat vibe. This Thing, an upbeat psych song that has sort of these moments when we get a little bit more proggy and some sort of like Genesis keyboard sounds, like early Genesis, like Peter Gabriel era, even like like early Foxtrot, Nursery Climb, that kind of stuff. Those kind of synth sounds just kind of seep in and just kind of wash over us and give us a slightly prog edge that I think works, is pretty cool. And that's This Thing. And then the last two songs, we get a lot of synthesized keyboard energy, almost becomes a techno thing at one point. Acarine has this really cool synth energy throughout the entire thing. And then at the end, we just get like, the song's like 5.5 minutes long. Like the entire second half of the song is just this instrumental thing with like, almost sounds like it could be a Kraftwerk or outtake or something like that with a lot of synth energy. We get like some dance grooves that drop in. Completely sounds like it just crossed over the fence from another yard and it's like, hey, what are you doing hanging out with us? You don't belong on this album. It just, it feels out of place by the time we get to like the second half of the song. And then the final song is Side Boogie, which the second half of Akron kind of makes sense as a lead into that. And this is just a really cool sort of digital techno song, a lot of keyboards, a lot of synths, this really cool wow, wow keyboard sounds that comes in at the end that keeps repeating like this little short little like lick, this motif that it keeps that just sounds absolutely amazing. I wish I could make that synth sound with my voice, but I can't. The album ends really strong. I think by far the most interesting thing on here are those two last tracks, the last like 12 minutes of the album. The other stuff is good. At times, kind of great. The Cruel Millennial, I think, is maybe the highlight of the middle part of the album. But there's not a lot of tracks on here that really, really stand out for me. And when I'm done listening to it, I'm not really compelled to go back and revisit it. I enjoy it when I listen to it, but I can't say out of everything they've done so far, it's one of those where I'm like, it's not one of those if I was trying to turn somebody on to King Gizzard, this is not the album I would give them to start with. I think I would hold off on this until they already like him and then show them this side of them. Because I do think when you know everything else they do and you can recognize their tendencies, like we don't have anywhere on this album just your sort of hyper-driven, motoric, sort of just like really aggressive sort of pedal to the metal, krautrock-ish King Gizzard version of that type jam. We're missing that. And it seems like they somehow find a way to drop that in on every other album, no matter what the theme is. They didn't really find a way to drop that in on here, which is okay. They don't need to. But yeah, these are my defenses for why, when I rank it, I'm going to put it all the way back second to last. I have it right before Sketches of Brunswick East, but below both 12 Bar Brews and Eyes Like the Sky. Their first two albums, I think, are just a little more interesting. I think 12 Bar Brews is a couple just incredible garage psych rock songs, and I think the entire spaghetti western from Australian psych, whatever these people are, I think that their interpretation of like a cowboy spaghetti western on Eyes Like the Sky with that awesome narration is more compelling and more interesting and more fascinating than the stuff on Fishin' for Fishies. I think Fishin' for Fishies is just like, let's take it easy. We did 5 albums in a year. Let's just have a good time. Let's do what we do best. Let's just play music. And it's not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. I just think maybe the lack of ambition on their part just drops it to 13. I mean, I look at everything else on that album, and everything else on that album is just ridiculously good. Like, these are S tier albums with maybe a couple A tier albums thrown in. Span is fantastic, but that's my defense for why I'm dropping it on Fishin' for Fishies. There's one guy in the comment, Paul. Every time I post a review, like, we almost have the exact opposite rankings on everything. If I love it, it's generally at the bottom of the list. If I don't like it, it's generally at the top of the list. Really interested to see where this one winds up on his list. Thank you for sharing that as we go on. So, interested to see. This is the one where I'm like, we got to be somewhere same on this one. This is the one where we're going to align, I think. Interested in everybody else's, but that's what I got. Let me know what you think about this album, your thoughts on this, why I'm wrong, all that kind of stuff, information I might have missed out. But yeah, excellent band, but Fishin' for Fishies, bottom of the list for me as far as my personal favorites go. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.